Well, with thanks to Yash from his previous video just a few moments ago, he talked quite a lot about Brent crude and also about the cryptocurrencies. So we're going to take it off across from there and then also move into a couple of the other discussion points as well in relation to the indices, and then also look at gold, silver, and a couple of the other instruments as well, like we normally look at here at strategic markets. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so welcome back. Well, let's take a look at Brent crude. As Yash mentioned in his video, there appears to be a little bit of weakness coming into Brent crude right now as we speak. He was mentioning the ascending wedge in terms of the potential of the weakness popping through. If you haven't seen that video, pop across and have a look over at his video as well too. Now, in relation to that ascending wedge pattern that's been forming, we're actually seeing it happening here in relation to a little bit of weakness coming along in relation to this 50-day moving average being that blue line. And you can see that popping along there in terms of the close beneath that line at the end of the week. There's also a bit of a failure in relation to the quarterly VWAP being that purple line. So we're seeing it on two fronts. We're actually seeing it on the third front as well in relation to the short-term moving averages as well, about a failure beneath that. We're also seeing lower highs and lower lows in relation to the lagging indicator on the Ichimoku curve. So there's a lot of failures potentially along the lines in terms of Brent crude. The other really, really big sticking point in relation to all of this too, would be if the Tenkan Sen, being this blue line, started to cross over this baseline area. That would be even further failure of the actual overall trend, and even a closure below the cloud. So any of those kind of aspects there would really lead to further failure or further weakness in terms of Brent crude. If we're talking about USO, you can see very, very similar kind of patterns starting to emerge over there as well. It hasn't actually come across beneath the 50-day moving average or the quarterly VWAP at this stage, but expect that to occur if we keep on getting more and more weakness in terms of Brent crude. A really interesting chart to keep an eye on, though, considering all of this geopolitical turmoil, is uranium. Considering the mere fact that we're really having a lot of discussion about uranium in terms of Iran at this point in time, notice the weakness in uranium that's going on right now, especially over this past week. We've actually had a full-on collapse in terms of all of the moving averages, in terms of the share price going against the moving averages in recent times. And we're actually starting to come back up to test, especially the 200-day moving average being this red line. We're smack bang on that right now. Whether or not the unit price for the uranium ETF, which is what we're looking at on the screen right now, decides to respect this 200-day moving average based on all of these geopolitical discussions that we're having at the moment. Now, let's wait and see what does happen. Should the unit price actually respect this and fall to the downside, that may actually occur, then what that will probably tell us is that basically we're probably getting along the lines of more and more peace talks coming through, I'd be suspecting, because everything is being along the lines of, okay, well, the supply of uranium could be actually quite good and there'd be less demand for it. So that could be the situation that's going on. We'll wait and see. But overall, we've got lower highs and lower lows being a major, major issue in terms of the situation that's going on. So really keep an eye. But it's well below the cloud. We've actually had a crossover in terms of that Tenkan Sen blue line beneath the baseline. That will normally lead to negative tendencies in terms of the unit price of whatever you're looking at in relation to the chart. And that's what we're seeing at this point in time. So let's see how things do go there. Now, if we think back to what Yash was talking about in his particular presentation as well, he was talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum. So let's have a look at those as well whilst we're looking at the charts, and then we can look at the other instruments whilst we're at it. Now, wasn't it fascinating how he was looking at the liquidation heat map when it comes to Bitcoin, especially around about that 74,000 point? Now, the 74,000 point, like we were talking about in the last video earlier in the week in terms of Wednesday, was around about this area in terms of the 4-hour support line of 74,800. And sure enough, we have a test of that towards the end of the week. Tested that area and it has bounced directly off it, very, very strongly as well, might we add, because look at the tail in terms of what's been happening there. So it's bounced directly off that, and now we're pretty much bouncing right back up to the 150-day moving average, being that orange line. Now, where it goes from here, we're really unsure, because we're pretty much jam-packed in between all of these moving averages here as to what the circumstance is. But at this point in time, the buyers are in control considering we are above the quarterly VWAP being that purple line. That's essentially what's going on. But there is a caveat to all of this. And the big caveat is the mere fact that the Tenkan-sen blue line has still crossed beneath the baseline. And remember, like I just said before in terms of another chart, when you have that situation occurring, it generally indicates negative tendencies for charts overall. And we are looking at the daily chart here in terms of Bitcoin. So there is still some caution as to what the situation is here with this. However, there is a positive, and we are talking about the positive in terms of Ethereum, the fact that we did test this support line back here, in terms of the support line back from April of 2023, of that magic number of 2100 that we're talking about in Wednesday's video, and we tested that, and we have successfully tested that at the present time. We're still above that point at the moment. Whether we stay above that point, though, is the big question, because we're still beneath all of these other moving averages, as you can see. And the sellers are still in control in relation to Ethereum overall because we are still below both the yearly and the quarterly VWAP at this stage. However, another caveat, we actually have the lagging indicator on the Ichimoku now rising above the cloud. That can actually give us an indication of at least a short-term positive tendency in relation to this particular chart. So as you can see, a lot of dynamics going at play. We're getting mixed signals here because the Tenkan-sen blue line has actually crossed over the red baseline here. So that would be actually a negative signal. So like I said, mixed signals going on here. We haven't got clear direction in relation to this. And this has implications for all of the altcoins because as we know, Ethereum is the leader in relation to all of the altcoins as well. So keep an eye on this as to what's going on. I wouldn't personally feel very, very comfortable in relation to Ethereum myself, and this contrasts to what actually Yash was saying in the other videos, so go and check that out. It contrasts to what he's saying because I would personally want to be seeing Ethereum getting above this area here in terms of the VWAP areas before I would know that the buyers are in control of the situation here and feeling comfortable with that. But that being said, I have to actually congratulate Yash in relation to what he was actually saying in terms of the target being met of what he was saying in terms of 42 cents. It's well exceeded that area in terms of what he was actually suggesting in relation to ONDO. And this is what the ONDO chart is doing. The lagging indicator of ONDO is doing higher highs and higher lows in relation to all of this. You've got the Tenkan-sen well above the baseline and has been for quite some time, and we're above all of the moving averages here. So we've actually got a very, very good trend going on in relation to ONDO, higher highs, higher lows in relation to the actual unit price as well, even though we actually had quite a bit of a jump and then a retracement going on back here. That's basically just testing the highs overall in relation to that. But we've got a pretty good tendency of what's going on overall here.
Thanks so much for that, Steve, because I wanted to do a quick segment in and talk about actually ONDO. ONDO on the daily is looking amazing because we've actually been on this bullish flag, come down, it's actually reconnected, broken up, broken past our prior support line, and right now possibly has an upside all the way to 55 cents if it continues this particular momentum. So ONDO is actually looking really good, and the continuation of this bullish flag could actually be hitting to 54 cents. So if you guys are paying attention to ONDO and this particular project tokenizing securities and putting them on the blockchain, this could be of interest to you and probably not a bad area for a trade, not financial advice. Always do your own research. But yes, I personally have positioned myself a little bit on ONDO very recently.
All right, cheers. Thanks for that, Yash. And thank you very much for sharing your perspective on that as well, too. It looks like a fantastic chart in terms of that for ONDO there as well. Probably just in terms of anyone who actually is in that position as well, maybe just consider from what the charts were suggesting there as well, maybe even just raising some stops underneath the recent newer higher low on that one there too. And then you can just let it run. But in relation to the indices was another aspect that Yash was actually speaking about as well too. Let's have a quick squiz at those now as well. The Russell, like Yash was actually mentioning, has basically also just tested some of these short-term moving averages as well in recent times, almost forming a newer higher high. Almost. Not quite, but almost. So we're actually starting to resume the almost higher high situation there. The SPY and the Qs in particular almost resuming the higher highs once again as well. So just so the SPY, just show the Qs there. But one thing to really keep an eye on is actually a bit of strength here now from the Dow, believe it or not. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has actually now reached all-time highs. This is starting to actually now go more towards Dow Theory aspect once again. So we're actually starting to see across the board strength in terms of all of the indices. This would really be confirmed more in relation to all of the indices should the SPY, the Qs, and the Russell start making higher highs once again as well. But, well, and you know me as probably being the king of caveats right now. I will admit, I have a bit of a laugh about that. We're really not seeing so much so in relation to the Dow Jones Transportation Average, which was a major component in terms of the Dow Theory many, many moons ago. However, it has actually reclaimed the quarterly VWAP in recent times. So some strength is starting to come back even in terms of the Dow Jones Transportation Average. And this is the index which actually tracks a lot of the stocks which get things moving in life. Railroads, airlines, all of those kind of things. So it's good to see this actually starting to get some strength once again. These kind of things are the things that you do need to have moving stuff, if you want to call it that, around the country. Things that actually show that the economy is actually moving in the right direction. So to have this moving in alignment with all of the other indices is a good thing and shows that the economy is actually doing something and going in the right direction. So keep an eye on this as well. If you start seeing this really start shooting upwards in alignment with the indices, then that really should be giving you some extra confidence that the economy is actually moving along pretty well. Another thing that should be showing a little bit more confidence as well in terms of the fact that things are going okay is actually the bonds area as well. We started seeing some improvement. Not as much as what I would have personally hoped for if we wanted to be seeing everything going really well in alignment. You'd want to be starting to see this at least getting back above the September lows. That would be one aspect you'd really want to be seeing. It's starting to inch its way back upwards. It hasn't got itself above the 15-day EMA at this point, which is that cyan line. Keep an eye on that one for sure. And the reason behind that is because of interest rates, and that's what's represented by this TNX. The interest rates have started coming down a little in terms of the 10-year bond yields, but probably not to the level that we'd all like to be seeing in order to really be assured, if you want to call it that everything's really coming back on track. And on top of that as well, the dollar is still actually a little bit highish than what everyone would really like. Former resistance, which is now acting as support in terms of that level from back in December of 2025, is still being respected at this point in time. So we want to be seeing that it probably comes down probably around about this level here, just underneath that level that we were just talking about a few moments ago, and then we'll see how things do pan out from there. So that's covered quite a lot of those areas overall that we normally do. Volatility is still remaining fairly low. That's a good thing. We don't want it being too low though. It could actually snap back and keep on going higher. So that's another aspect to keep an eye on. How about the precious metals? Well, overall, they're still sinking at this stage. And it's probably something you probably wouldn't be seeing, at least coming back to the VWAP areas and then seeing how things go from there. But they're still actually losing a bit of traction at this point in time. So overall, we're still seeing a little bit of weakness here with gold. Probably coming at this point, maybe even heading back towards a 200-day moving average. Silver, stuck in a bit of no man's land as well at this point in time, just beneath the quarterly VWAP. So there's still a little bit of weakness going on in relation to all of these things here. Okay, there is a lot of movement still going around, a lot of uncertainty still going around as well. You can obviously see that Brent Crude and a lot of the cryptos are still in a lot of movement and stagnation and a lot of different things happening around the place with things there as well. The biggest areas of concern, though, are really the metals. And if the metals continue to keep falling, that could really lead to a lot of concern in a lot of the traders' minds overall. Really keep an eye on that and really keep an eye on the dollar in particular as well. We've been mentioning that over the last couple of videos too. So really make sure that you keep an eye on those levels and keep an eye on your own levels in terms of risk levels as well too. But like we always say as well, make sure you keep on checking in with us. We'll keep on guiding you through all the different levels and everything that's going on in the markets as well and keep you abreast of any of the updates that you need to be really keeping an eye on overall. With that, mate, I'm going to pass it right back to you for only those last concluding remarks before we let everyone go for the new trading week.
Thank you so much for that, Steve. Great analysis today. If you guys enjoyed that, please feel free to give us a like, or drop us a comment as to what you found interesting or something that we can do better. And if you are glad to be on the journey with us, please do give us a subscribe. That goes a very long way. You would have seen that today we've tried something a bit different. We've had 2 videos up. One is a bit more on the fundamental tech side of things, and then Steve going really hard with his technical and strong analysis over there. So if you are a fan of that, drop us a comment and just say dual videos. If you can please drop that in the comments. But otherwise, enjoy that particular segments and sessions, and we hope to keep providing you with the best technical analysis and fundamental ones that we possibly can. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you soon.